Hello. I'm probably not going to use the video for this and maybe just the audio, but there's something that I really want to talk about and get off my chest here while I have it on the top of my mind. And hopefully, we can make this a coherent conversation. It's going to be most likely very controversial. So take what I have to say with a grain of salt. But these are just thoughts that I have in my head. And of course, feel free to agree or disagree in the commentaries. Feel free to add whatever you want to say. People who have know my stuff, because I have like a bajillion videos now, even though my subscriber base is really small. You know that, and if you don't know, now you know that I am quite an I am not the most like educated person by any means. I'm just really, I can be very incredibly ignorant. So, a few things that I want to mention. First of all, I'm in the Karelian region of Russia in Petrozavodsk. So, I figure I just say that. I put out some videos kind of like messing with the timeline a little bit just because I don't know, to just not make it so obvious of what's going on. So it kind of causes a little bit of confusion. But I will say, hey, the food, the food up here is exceptional. It is really good. And I'm talking about like the prepared food about the prepared food from like just the grocery store. So I just want to say that the food is exceptional. I'm having like a tartar sauce that was prepared by the grocery store. It's like 10 out of 10. And I mean 10 out of 10. It's so good. The chicken prepared at the grocery store, 10 out of 10. I had bread yesterday. I usually don't eat bread, but the bread was fresh and it had dill on it and like some garlic. 10 out of 10. So I had a few thoughts that I want to talk about, and hopefully I can remember everything. But the first is the reality of the situation with me in Russia, the harsh, really brutal reality of me in Russia, which stems from some thoughts that I had about. Um, I had an idea pop in my head that Russia is like Germany on crack. That being said, I have never been to Germany, but based on the stereotype that you hear about Germany, of it being like a rules based, systems based society, I'm like, man, Russia must be like Germany on crack. I've never been to Germany. However, I did read a um, essay by George Orwell where he talks about Germans. So if you're curious, you should look that up. There's a free PDF of all of Orwell's essays. You could probably find it on the internet. One of them is about Germans. So you could read that. It's just a short essay. You could read that to understand what I'm talking about. I can't confirm or disaffirm what he says, because like I said, I really don't know Germans. My only contact with Germans is like in the States, people from Germany, and I would be curious to know what exactly are the parallels between Germany and Germans and Russians, because I know that Russia occupied East Germany, and then there's also German settlers that came to Russia. So I just had that rolling around my head, and I was like, man, I wonder if they're like really similar cultures. Um, in some way, they have like this kind of like origin, like root where they're very similar. Anyway, besides that, I want to be brutally honest. I want to have like a really brutally honest conversation. I really hope that people will tune in and listen to this. I know some people will, but I'm 37 years old now. Okay, I've been to Russia 5 times. I'm a man. Okay, and I took a language class today, and I think the reality set in. The real brutal reality set in about how long it's gonna take me to learn Russian. A real like it really set in. And I was thinking, I was like, wow, man, I'm 37, man. These past couple years I've had like a transformation, and I feel like I really clung on to my youth for a long time. Youth could be synonymous with like immaturity. So I've had like kind of like a growing period where I feel like I've transformed into like, I don't know, my fully developed like self. And here I am. I'm 37. That's like for a young person who identifies as like a young person, that's like really old. Okay? And it's tough. It's like dying. It's like you're dying to some part of yourself, and you have to now face this new life, like this is your new identity now. And I thought about really, because I see how people live in Russia. I talk to normal people, I encounter normal people all the time. And, I know what the thing is when I lived, I'll just speak about myself, but I want to relate to people, and I don't, it's not really about me. I want to, I want to make a commentary about, just in general, and hopefully, I don't know, people can maybe understand what I'm trying to say. But in the USA bubble, right, which is kind of a bubble, probably every country is its own bubble in a way. I'm not sure. Um, but particularly in the USA, right, you can get accustomed to certain things. And like me living in the US, I had basically this attitude. I adopted this attitude of like not wanting to talk to people, not really wanting to, be close with people, right? And I thrived on that for a long time, towards the end there until 2020 hit. Then everybody really became isolated. But then I believe that 2020 sparked that was a really cataclysmic event as far as like making a real transformation in the States towards the worse, right? Like the promoted the acceleration of the deceleration, right? Like the acceleration of the degenerate of the decline or whatever, where everything just kind of fell apart. The wheels started falling off, all the screws started coming loose and everything. And I realized like, oh, um, so after I had been in Russia a few times, and I noticed Russian society and I saw how people were, I really realized how antisocial I had become and how that really wasn't natural. I realized that me being by myself like so much and living my life the way I was living it, um, it was not really the most natural thing. But here's the thing, I don't know why that is. I don't know why I am the way I am. Um, I suppose like maybe I could go to some kind of like therapist or some kind of psychologist who might be able to give me some kind of explanation. Um, but I was thinking, I was like, wow, I'm 37 years old. I'm in Russia by myself. I'm doing this kind of thing. I have no real friends, really. I'm really open to making friends, but at the same time, I have this like fear of commitment because I don't know how to manage. I think I don't know how to manage most relationships. I think that I can manage ones where I feel very comfortable with, But I think in terms of man, I guess it would just mean I'm not like I'm not normal. I don't fall down the middle of the line as far as like being able to do these things, which I feel like most people are able to do. Because I notice how Russians interact with each other, how they manage relationships with each other. I just noticed like I could just notice their behavior, and I could see that. Like, at the same time, I am in a, being in Russia, um, I'm like, you know, I just got a comment about me idealizing. I don't want to glamorize being in Russia. I don't think there's anything extraordinary about going anywhere nowadays. It's 2024. You could literally go wherever you want. It's not a big deal, okay? Like, that being said, it doesn't make it like you can go anywhere, but as far as the process of integrating into a society into a society is extremely difficult, and I don't think there's any shortcuts. I mean, it's very extremely difficult. It's very challenging. Going to Russia as a as a 37-year-old man, and if you're really trying to integrate and not just live in your own like, expat exclave where you know, you're just living your same life, but you're just in a new country, like probably most digital nomads are. They don't really, the hard part is the integration into society. Because, okay, um, yeah, it's very difficult. It's difficult. It's difficult. Oh yeah, and it makes you feel as a grown man. It makes you feel like born. You're like reborn, not like you're just like you're a baby. Like you're completely helpless. You're like completely don't know anything. I mean, imagine a place where you've mastered how to maneuver, right? You've mastered how to do things. And then you're going to a new place where you literally don't know anything. You're basically like a child and you need help with everything. You don't know what's going on. You don't know why things are happening the way they're happening. Everything appears the same, but it's completely different. And you cannot detect a clear reason. It's like trying to understand a female, like a woman. Like things are happening, but you do not know the underlying reason. Or maybe like trying to understand a predatory animal, like a bear or a tiger. There's a quote in a book about tigers. I forgot, it was about Siberian tigers, and it was like, even if a lion could speak, you still wouldn't understand it, right? Like, meaning like you could at most try to detect patterns like cryptography, but there's a inherent misunderstanding as far as why things are happening and why people react to you in a certain way and whatnot. People usually say like, people like to say these sayings like, oh, everyone's human everywhere, everyone is human. But I think that's an overly simplistic way of describing the minute details and the nuances of fitting into a society, a completely different society, a completely different culture. There's all these little things that you don't really understand, right? So I was thinking, wow, like, I'm really not a normal person. Like, I'm really not normal. And I don't mean that to say I'm exceptional or unexceptional. I just mean that I do not have, I did not realize like how abnormal I was. Like, I'm like, I don't have the skills that other people really have as far as just functioning in a normal society, as far as like mostly like dealing with different types of relationships and doing different things like that. Now, I'm not trying to say, bro, I'm not like this weird, like, I'm not like this weirdo, but what I am saying is that like based on what I see and how people interact with each other, like I realize that I have some like probably like some kind of disorders or something like that, or probably this is just me observing my own self. And then I realize, I'm not going to speak for all Westerners, but I was just thinking to myself, I could be really wrong about this, but most Westerners that come here, th- I'm trying to think. I'm not going to say that. But I was thinking, I was like, maybe is there something kind of like off about most Westerners that come here, or most Westerners that are from the States that come to Russia and are like, I love Russian stuff and whatever. Like, is there something kind of off about them? If I'm being completely honest, Russian life is a stark, brutal contrast to American life. I guess the the summary of that, like what's the point of me saying all that? I don't know. Is that, maybe I've led such a dysfunctional life in the States for so many years. Also, I didn't really foresee myself living to be like so old. So um, coming to a place where you see people functioning normally and interacting with each other. Russia's a very like interpersonal type of place. It's almost like an oxymoron. People give each other a lot of space and they mind their own business, but they know very well how to interact with each other very well. Like everyone knows Russia's a collectivist society. They look out for each other, but at the same time, it's also like the opposite. It's a very like kind of like it's like a cold place too. So it's like kind of both. Um, if that makes sense. But Russians really know how to interact with each other on a good level. That's what I've learned so much about. Like that's my education in Russia is not like in a school for me. Even though I am taking classes and I need to learn, but my education mostly was just from observing like human life in Russia and how people interact with each other. It taught me to be more patient. It taught me to be more kind. A lot of it was not understanding things and just watching it over and over until I tried to figure out some kind of meaning. Anyway, I don't want this to go on for too long, but lastly, I'll wanted to say um I read something about the Soviet Union collapsing in 1990s, right? And there was this song called American Boy by some group that I forgot what their name is. And it made me smile because I remember the what's the word? The sympathy, it's not the sympathy, but like the how people felt at that time. And if you were American, you were looked at as like it was like a stereotype, the Americans who had like this good lifestyle compared to the collapsed Soviet Union, who was going through a lot of turmoil. And I read somewhere that Russians had lost their confidence because their whole system had collapsed. And it's funny because now, 30 something years later, the same thing is happening in the States. There's this episode of The Sopranos where um, Paulie goes to see this Russian guy. The guy who worked for the Interior Ministry. He was the interior decorator in the show. And Paulie goes to see him and he picks up a remote and he's like, "What's this?" And the guy's like, "It's a universal remote." And he's like, "Universal remote? Look at this guy." He's like, "You're probably wiping your butt with your hand before you came here to the States," right? That was generally the mentality that the lifestyle in the US was way better than anywhere else. And that was generally accepted as fact. So imagine how disconcerting it is for the role reversal where now our society is collapsing, right? And I think that results in the loss of confidence of a lot of Americans, in my opinion. Uh, because everything that you relied on your education, your upbringing, and everything. You said, I can rely on this. This works. Clearly, everything around me is good. But as that collapses, then you begin to doubt. You're like, hey, well, I don't have anything to be confident in anymore. Yeah, myself, a lot of your identity is wrapped up in where you're from and your environment. A lot of it. I would say, I don't know what percentage, but I would say a good big part of who you are is wrapped up in where you're from and how you grew up. And if you lose confidence in that, if you realize that everything was kind of like you see all through the lies and you see through the BS and you compare education systems and you realize my schooling was terrible. Like it was terrible. And then you realize, well, what do I have to be confident in? And then you realize, oh, I should probably just be humble. I really feel that in a big way. I feel that in a big way, And the funny thing is, I went through a whole experience in my life of me rebuilding my self-confidence. Like it took me so long. I don't know if I've told this story or not, but I was in a really rock bottom situation, and a lot of that had to do with my self-confidence and my self-esteem, which was completely at the ground level. It was below ground level. I had no confidence, nothing. I had to rebuild that up from scratch until I became very confident. And imagine rebuilding that and all of a sudden realizing that everything you thought is completely falling apart. Everything that you thought was real, everything that you thought was good, everything that you thought was solid completely is falling apart. I mean, that does something to your morale and your confidence. And one last thing I wanted to mention, there's a buddy of mine who who was a really good friend of mine, and he developed. I'm not gonna diagnose him, but he basically went crazy. Um, I won't say exactly like what diagnosis because I don't know. Like I was gonna say paranoid schizophrenic, but I'm not sure if that's exactly what it is. Um, but I was gonna say like I'd imagine that there's gonna be, and there is already probably, a proliferation of mental disorders coming out of the U.S. because of this dissonance, right? Like this kind of like it's like a psychic break, people going crazy, and this thought was kind of like brought about by that a lot of these disorders tend to make their appearance in people's 30s, right? In their 30s. So I'm having like kind of like I guess you can call it a midlife crisis. I really am having a crisis every day I wake up. I'm very cognizant about my age now, which I never was before. All of a sudden now I'm 37. I'm extremely cognizant about my age, and I'm at times like very confused. That being said, I'm really have no idea if anyone would watch this long about this. I really hope you did, but I love being in Russia. I really do. I love it here, and it's extremely challenging. I'm happy that there's a way for me to stay here, and I want to stay here. But being in Russia has really brought to light a lot of my like deficiencies, and it's really shown a light about like who I am as a just as a man, as a human being in general, in relation to other human beings. And I just had that on my mind. I guess the point of the video and the basic gist of the of the thought is that I don't know. I hope that we can still continue to learn as we get older, and continue to evolve in a positive direction. Um, Even though the primary years are over with, the primary learning years and stuff, but yeah, I wonder, what do you guys think about getting older? What do you guys think about um being alone and like being just floating around, like, yeah. Don't take this too to heart too much. Like, don't, it's just, I'm just talking, but I don't know what else to say. All right, well, thanks for listening if you were, and I'll see you on the next one. All right, bye.